Then there is a very important caveat, which I think was also raised in Ravindran's session, about how this wages will be calculated. And it says that if a payment made by an employer to an employee exceeds 1/2 of such percent as may be notified by the central government. Now for house rent allowance, they have notified 50%. So if it exceeds 50%, then the amount which exceeds that 1/2 or 50% shall be deemed to be remuneration and shall be added accordingly to the wages in this clause. So then you will have to add that amount to the basic wages. So I have given an example to clarify that. Provided further, for all purposes of equal wages to all genders and for the purpose of payment of wages, emoluments specified in clause D, F and E, G shall be taken for computation of wages. Where an employee is given in lieu of the whole or part of the wages any remuneration in kind by his employer, the value of such remuneration does not exceed 15% of the total wages shall be deemed to be forming part of the wages. So now then the second caveat also is there, that if you are giving any perquisite to the employee concerned and it exceeds 15% of the wages, then the amount which exceeds 15% will be added to the basic wages. So this is what it means. So essential to note, under clauses A to I, exceeds 1/2 of such percentage as may be notified by the central government. So this 1/2 can be modified by the government at a subsequent stage, and they have reserved this right, in the act itself. So there is no need for bringing a separate, legislative initiative. It is an administrative act that they can do so. Okay. Now I have given, a very simple scenario for you to understand that earlier employer was giving a lot of allowances. Now today you will now be required to switch over to what the government has declared as wages. And there are three scenarios which I have mentioned, assuming that the minimum wages are notified as 12,000. So generally, this is what it is in Minimum Wages Act. There is a component called basic wages. Then there's another component called special allowance or dearness allowance. And these are the two elements that components that constitute this. Now in some states like Maharashtra and Kerala, on this basic and DA, you are required to pay also 5% HRA. So, this component automatically will also come in. And this is part of the Minimum Wages Act. If you have got 50 or more people working for you, then HRA is also compulsory. So basic wage, dearness allowance under the Minimum Wages Act will be required to be paid. And that comes to 12,000. Then the PF liability will be 1,440. ESI liability at 3% will be 360 for the employer. And the cost to the company will be 13,800. This is the standard scenario for minimum wages, assuming the minimum wages to be 12,000. And if you are paying like this, you are compliant. Now let's look at this. Many companies were paying allowances. Okay, so let's say this company pays 6,000 rupees as basic wage, 4,000 as dearness allowance, and 2,000 as fixed HRA. Okay, now this HRA is just a fixed HRA, and you are paying 12,000. Okay, so minimum was 12,000 in scenario 1. Now also it is 12,000. Is this compliant? Answer is no, because here basic wages will be 10,000. PF liability will be 1,200 only. Okay, and ESI liability will be 360. Cost to the company is 13,560. But this is non-compliance because the employee is not getting the minimum wages of 12,000 as per this act. He is getting 12,000 rupees in income, but that will not be reckoned as wages. You will be required to pay this additional amount of 2,000 to be compliant with the Minimum Wages Act. The third scenario is something which is very drastic, and I think this is what many companies have been doing. I've seen companies which are paying 100% of the basic wages as house rent allowance, and this is with the view primarily because PF Act excludes house rent allowance. So there are many companies who have top-loaded the house rent allowance substantially. So in this case, this company is paying minimum wages 12,000. This company is paying 13,600. Question here is this compliant? Answer is no, because if you look at the wages that will be reckoned as per this act, 6,000 will be included, 2,000 will be included, and this 20% beyond 50% of the basic wages and DA, that is 8,000. So 4,000 would be the amount that would be there. 8,000 plus 1,600, 20% would be taken on. This will be considered as a wage, 9,600. And you have to pay 12,000. So you are short of that and you will have to pay. So in spite of the company having a cost to the company of 15,208, it is still not compliant. So we need to understand this, that the wages now defined under the wages code will make you do a proper homework on what is compliant and what is not compliant. So merely paying more wages doesn't mean that you are compliant. And this is, the Supreme Court judgment in air freight, okay, and Hindustan Sanitary Ware, both, say that total salary is important. Now you will have to rework and, reorient your wage system to what is being talked about in the code. Only then you will be compliant. Then definition of worker. This is a very important definition. Definition of employee we have seen. Definition of worker we need to understand.